All right, hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between killing and murdering, because there is some amount of argument over what is meant by the commandment, thou shalt not kill. If you go online, there's a whole bunch of internet resources stating and proving that the original commandment was thou shalt not commit murder. Now, the reason for this is because people like to kill, and but most people don't like murder, and there is a difference between killing and murder. You know, the word kill, like even in our culture, we kill time. Working on the car with somebody, they may say kill the engine. If we got some kind of thing growing in our yard we don't like, we go get weed killer to kill weeds. And so obviously the Ten Commandments is not about that. But we also have different words for killing animals than we have for killing humans. We have different words for killing humans with malice and killing humans as part of some kind of a ritual. And so there are many, many words that in our English language could mean the same thing, basically. So murder is one, killing is one, manslaughter, homicide, assassination, slaying, slaughtering, executing, massacring, and exterminating. These are all different words that could be used to describe the act of killing a human being. And so we do need to kind of figure out which one God made a law against. Now, the Ten Commandments are in the Old Testament, which was originally recorded in, well, probably many languages, but everything that survives down to our day is in ancient Hebrew. The New Testament is not in Hebrew, it's in Greek, so it's a whole different language, whole different bunch of words, and all we're doing today is dissecting the word that's used in the Ten Commandments, so we don't need to compare all of the words that mean killing in Greek. I think pretty much everybody recognizes that Jesus spoke out against all forms of violence. So we don't need to dissect Jesus' words to determine what kind of killing Jesus didn't like. But if we go back and take a look at the word that's found in the Ten Commandments, it is rotzach, which is Strong's H7523. I guess a lot of people may stumble onto this video who are not familiar with my work. When I say Strong's, what I'm doing is I'm referring to a book that was written 100 and some odd years ago by a man named Strong. And it's basically a definition of every ancient word that is found in the Bible and how those are translated into our English words. And they're all cataloged, and this particular word is cataloged as H, which stands for Hebrew, 7523. So we're gonna look at this word rotzach to determine what it is that God did not want people to do when He gave the Israelites the Ten Commandments. Now, there are other words in the Hebrew language that mean kill, just like in English we have many words that mean kill. In Hebrew there are words such as Strong's H2026, which is muth, Strong's H4194. Actually, I got that wrong. It's harag, Strong's H2026. Muth is Strong's H4194. Nakah is Strong's H5221, etc., etc. There's plenty of them. I think I found about a dozen, and I didn't really feel like it was important to catalog every single word that could be translated as kill. Just know that there's a lot of them, just like there are in English. Now, normally when I mention things like Strong's catalog numbers or scriptural references, you'll see the words appear somewhere on the screen. I just got a new program for editing. I've been using it for the last few videos, and I have as of yet not figured out how to do the text, because somehow it's different. You know, almost all of these editing programs are similar, but the one I'm using now is HitFilm, and how you do text is different. I haven't figured it out. If you use HitFilm, hit me up. Let me know. Maybe you could talk and get on Skype with me and talk me through that, and I don't have to spend so much time trying to figure it out. But that's it. Exodus chapter 20 and verse 13 is where this Ten Commandments are found. In fact, it's found later on, and then throughout the Bible, individual commandments are brought up. But thou shalt not kill appears for the first time as thou shalt not rotzach at Exodus chapter 20 and verse 13. Now, the argument that the churches make, because, you know, if you think about it, every religion on earth has been established in order to provide ritual human sacrifices to Satan, to prepare mankind for the ascension of the Antichrist. That's the only reason religions exist. God gave his law to mankind. Mankind refused. Mankind went into a covenant agreement with Satan. And that is how religion was established. But anyways, if we look at the word rotzach as it's used throughout the Bible, we never see this word used to describe the killing of weeds or thyme or animals. It's always used to describe killing humans. So this is kind of evidence that the word rotzach could mean murder, because we don't use the word murder when talking about weeds or animals or thyme. But if we look through there, we find other scriptures that use the word rotzach that don't sound like murder. So we'll look at one of them, which is found at Numbers chapter 35 and verse 11, which is part of the law that was given to mankind through Moses about how to deal with someone who kills a man accidentally. And it says there, you shall select cities of refuge, that the manslayer who kills any person without intent may flee there. Now, the English word manslayer that is used in this verse is translated from the Hebrew word rotzach. Now, if you do any research, you'll see that the words there really don't look like rotzach at all. In fact, none of the words that you'll find in any of the original texts look like rotzach, because rotzach is the word that ends up in the later Hebrew text. But it's just like our English words like kill. You have words like kill, killing, kills, killer. Lots of words using the base word kill. And so certain letters are added in order to allow us English speakers to know exactly what that's about. Well, the same thing is true in Hebrew. If you do any real in-depth study, you'll see that, in fact, even though a lot of the words that we find in our Strong's Exhaustive Concordance based on the word rotzach don't look like rotzach, but there are explanations and they make good sense. So the law about these cities of refuge are very clearly spelled out. That if a man, and here's the example that the Bible itself gives. If a man is chopping wood, and in the process of chopping wood, the head falls off his axe and flies off and kills his companion, that man still, under Jewish law, could be killed unless he fled to a city of refuge. It's very obvious that this would be an accidental killing. Once he got to the city of refuge, he had to sit down with the elders before they would let him in and explain his side of the story. And one of the rules that these elders were given was that there had to be no contention between the man who accidentally killed his friend or his companion and his companion. In other words, even though it was an accident, if there had been any contention prior to the accident that cost this man his life, then he wouldn't get into the city of refuge, and then the person who was given the assigned task of killing him, the one called the Avenger of Blood, would be allowed to kill him, unless he could somehow evade him, by leaving Israel altogether. So anyways, that was the deal. Obviously, the rules are strict enough that it would mean that the person doing the rotzach could not have any ill intent towards the person who died. It had to be obvious that the method of death was an accident, and then they would be given a reprieve. They would be given a way to keep from being killed by going into the city of refuge. And they had to stay there for the rest of their life or until the high priest died. Once the high priest died, then everyone in the city of refuge could go anywhere they want. Historically, it's understood that a lot of these people would be there long enough that they would establish themselves. Maybe they brought their wives, their children, they had built houses. And so when the time was up, they may have chosen to stay there. But at that point, they were free to travel anywhere they wanted. So even if they lived in the city of refuge, they were not forced to stay there. So anyways, that kind of proves that the rotzach does not mean murder. But another word we have in English is homicide. And homicide is probably what rotzach is. And here's the English definition of the word homicide. Homicide, the act of one human killing another. A homicide requires only a volitional act by another person that results in death, and thus a homicide may result from accidental, reckless, or negligent acts, even if there is no intent to cause harm. Homicides can be divided into many overlapping legal categories, including murder, manslaughter, justifiable homicide, killing in war, either following the laws of war or as a war crime, euthanasia, and capital punishment. Depending on the circumstances of the death, some homicides are considered crimes, while others are permitted or even ordered by the legal system. And if we look at every example of the use of the word rotzach, the word that the churches argue means murder, we'll find that in fact, rotzach means homicide. In other words, any kind of a death resulting from a volitional act by another man, whether intentional or unintentional, whether it's part of an execution or part of warfare. So, you know, here's the reason I even bring this up. Is I have the internet, I have Facebook, I have email, I have a YouTube channel. And so pretty much every day, somebody writes me to tell me how horrible the Republicans are because they are warmongers. They bring about these horrible wars, they murder people. And so as murderers, Republicans are evil. At the same time, every other day, somebody writes to tell me about how evil the Democrats are because they abort their babies. In other words, we have a law in the United States now that human beings have the right to choose whether or not to end the life of their unborn child. And it's supposedly the Democrats that brought this law around. Historically, if you look back, and this is called pro-life or pro-choice. Pro-life is you're for life, you refuse to kill a baby before it's born. Pro-choice is you're for the mother's right to choose. Now, historically, it's been like since the 70s that they made it a law that humans could abort their children. And in that time, we've had Democratic Supreme Courts and we've had Republican Supreme Courts. We'd have Democratic Senates, Republican Senates, Democratic Congresses, Republican Congresses, Democratic presidents and Republican presidents. And in all those years, people have been getting abortions. Not only that, but in all of those years, we have had warfare. And so, in all honesty, this is not a Republican-Democrat argument. It's a civilization argument. As an example, most people who are Democrats, when asked, would you put an end to all wars, they'll have some kind of excuse for why we have to have wars. But the basic answer would be yes. I would put an end to war. If you were to ask a Republican if they wanted an end to abortion, you know, some Republicans have had abortions, you know. They may make excuses. They may say something about, well, in the case of rape or something. There would be some kind of excuse. But overall, the answer that most Republicans would give is, yes, I would like to put an end to abortion. But they're just humans. Republicans and Democrats are just like me who's eaten either. I don't choose a team to go to war with. I'm a human being on this earth, and I would love to put an end to all deaths. But I can't do it because I'm human, and if I join a team, I still won't be able to do it. Here's how you can put an end to war. To end war, The wicked spirits have to be removed. That's not anything we can do. That's something Jesus said. Jesus promised that he would do that when he came back. If humans could do that, then Jesus would have never made the promise. He would have just said, remove all of these demons. I'll see you if you need me. But here's some of the verses that prove that civilization is under the control of the demons. And in case you want to argue, I mean, I'll give you 3 really good ones that I like, but I got together with some friends recently and we just sat around talking about how many scriptures are in the Bible that indicate that Satan is the ruler of the world. And there's a lot. You know, it's not just these 3 I'm going to give you. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 19 says, we know that we are children of God, but the ruler of civilization is Satan. So as human beings, we are children of God, but Satan is the ruler of civilization. And that's there. That's 1 John 5:19. Now, if you look it up in your English Bibles, most English Bibles say the world, the ruler of the world. That word in Greek is cosmos, K-O-S-M-O-S. It can mean planet Earth, or it can mean human society as it exists on planet Earth. James chapter 4 and verse 4 says, whoever is a friend of civilization makes himself God's enemy. Very plain, easy to understand. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 4, civilization's God has blinded the eyes of unbelievers, which would explain why everybody in this team hates women who have abortions. Everybody on that team hates people who go to war. They're teams. They're civilization teams. They are on Satan's side. Now, how could we end abortion? It's the same thing. All we need to do, this is very simple, make a world where children can have a secure future, because in most cases, that's why women get abortions. They love their children. They cannot imagine bringing children into a world that hates them because they don't have a father, or just hates them because they're human beings. Revelation chapter 21 and verse 4 says, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. When that happens, women will be more than happy to have every child that they conceive. Can you do that? If you're a human being and you think voting will do that, you're an idiot human being. There's nothing we can do. And here's another thing. Like, even though every single Congress, Senate, Supreme Court, President has lived and ruled while warfare was going on and abortions have been going on since the 1970s, there have been times, you know, and this is the argument that's going to be made. People who love Republicans are going to say, well, every time we get a Republican Congress, there's a Democratic president. Or every time there's a Democratic Congress, there's a Republican president. And because of that, nothing ever gets done. Well, the reality is that during Roosevelt's term as president, which was a long time, he was a Democrat. Supreme Court was a Democratic Supreme Court, and Congress and Senate was Democratic. So everybody in the government was Democratic. If you remember, another thing that was happening when the Democrats were in control was World War II. Now, Democrats will argue that there was no choice because the Japanese started the war, the Germans started the war, we had no choice. We had to defend ourselves. That is not true. Because while all of those Democrats, those peace-loving Democrats, were ruling the world, America and Great Britain were going into Japan and wrecking everything. They were completely destroying the Japanese empire through economic oppression, through social oppression, and actually through warfare. To this day, people argue about whether the AVG, that's the American Volunteer Group, should be awarded medals because they were not part of the U.S. military when they went to Japan and started bombing. But the thing is, the government can't admit they were part of the American military because then it makes us the bad guys. The legalism that was used by America to start World War II was that they took most of their Air Force, fired them all, shipped them to Japan, and rehired them all as civilians. It was kind of like a money laundering scheme. The U.S. government sent money to Chiang Kai-shek. He sent it back to America, and America gave him bullets and planes and bombs and pilots. And the claim was, well, we didn't know what they were doing. We would have never let our army go over there and start bombing Japan if we'd have known that was going to happen. So, you know, these are the Democrats. These are the peace lovers. They're the ones that started World War II. And the same thing with Germany. Ever since 1918, the United States and Great Britain had been attacking Germany socially and economically until the entire German nation was about to go out of existence. The reason that a wacky man with a silly mustache was able to take control of that country was because the people were suffering so much that they would take hold of anything that was offered them. You know, and that was all set up by Great Britain and the United States under the, you know, this democratic government. All right. Now, there's going to be arguments about this because people who love warfare are going to have to chime in about what an idiot I am. And people who love abortions are going to have to chime in about what an idiot I am. So we're going to look at a couple of other verses that give a little bit deeper understanding of just how God feels about killing. Ezekiel chapter 20 is all about how God felt about Israel rejecting his law. Remember, he brought the 10 Commandments to Israel. He invited Moses up to the top of Mount Sinai and he said, here's some stones, they've got rules carved on them. Then Moses actually saw God carve the rules, the 10 Commandments onto the stones. God provided the stones, God wrote the rules. Now in English, you're gonna try to contest me on this, and I've got other videos about it, and I'll send those to you if you want to start a fight. But the reality is that when Moses got down and the Israelites were worshiping a golden calf, he broke those stones, and God said, okay, we're not gonna wipe these people out. What we'll do is we'll give them the rules that they want. So go back up onto the mountain. We'll give them another set of rules. The rules that he gave them this time, he told Moses, go get your own stones because I'm not even going to touch this. I'm not providing you the stones. I'm not going to write. And bring you something to carve with because you're going to have to make this law. So Moses went up. He got him some stones. He carved the second set of laws. There's hundreds of laws which have come to be known as the law of Moses. And those laws are spoken of in another verse. No, this is the same verse. At verse 25 of Ezekiel chapter 20, after explaining how God felt about Israel rejecting his laws, he said, moreover, I gave them statutes that were not good, and rules by which they could not have life, which included laws about warfare and capital punishment. So in that law, the first thing he did, after these people had worshipped the golden calf, he gave them the law and he said, who wants to represent me? And the Levites stepped forward and said, we'll do it. And he said, well, each one of you take your sons and take your brothers and offer them up as a sacrifice. And the Levites greedily grabbed everybody that they felt like deserved it and they killed them right there. Now, the argument is that those were the people that worshiped the golden calf. God was commanding them to kill those who worshiped the golden calf. Well, the fact is, the only names we have of people involved in this golden calf nonsense was Aaron. And they didn't kill Aaron. And in fact, it seems as if it was the Levites who were doing the worship of the golden calf. So it wasn't the people who were worshiping the golden calf who were sacrificed. This was simply a ritualistic bloodletting of innocent people. But even if it was people that were involved in the golden calf incident, as part of that law, the Israelites from that time on were required to engage in warfare. They were required to give their sons as soldiers. They were required to kill those who committed certain crimes. When the Bible says that this law requires that you kill your sons and your brothers, That's what they were doing. When they entered into the promised land, the first city they came to was Jericho. There's a very clear description of who those people were that lived in Jericho. They were the brothers of the Israelites. So the first thing they had to do was kill all of those people. It's part of that law. And that's how every law of every civilization works. And in fact, another verse that bears this out is about God's hatred of religion in general. And this is found in Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 3. Isaiah 66 and verse 3. He who slaughters an ox is like one who kills a man. He who sacrifices a lamb, like one who breaks a dog's neck. He who presents a grain offering, like one who offers pig's blood. He who makes a memorial offering of frankincense, like one who blesses an idol. These have chosen their own ways, and their soul delights in their abominations. So in this one verse, God is explaining that it doesn't matter how you kill somebody. If you cut their throats and bleed them out, if you break their necks, or however, it's still killing. If it's an unclean animal or a clean animal that you kill, it's still killing. If it's a human being, it's still killing. God sees the destruction of His plants and animals as bad. Now, most people in our culture have chosen to follow the rules of civilization, no matter what part of civilization they lived in. So whether it's American law, Sharia law, tax law, marijuana law, people have taken sides in which laws they're going to be obedient to. According to the Bible, God's Word, any law that is not natural law, and I don't mean based on natural law, but any law that is not natural law, also known as the Ten Commandments, is nonsense. All human laws disgust God. So if you're out there and you're eating meat, you really ain't got no leg to stand on if you want to badmouth people who engage in warfare. You know, if you engage in warfare, you do not have a leg to stand on if you want to accuse people who get abortions. Let's all just wait for Jesus Christ to return, the wicked to be removed from the earth, and killing to end permanently by the power of God. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.